I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with all these fine folks today and to taste a little bit of the culture. Lord, thank you for everything. This is truly a blessing for bringing us all out here today, and let us get ready to eat. Amen. Well, I'm from Eastern North Carolina. I grew up here in Wilmington, North Carolina. My background was strong vegetarian cooking. I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist, and my family was just super proud of culture and everything that's natural and holistic, and that was my foundation and my background. My son has high functioning autism, what they call Asperger's syndrome. And growing up, he spent most of his time down in Charleston, South Carolina with his grandparents. Well, my son is a big black historian, and he began to talk to me about the Gullah folks. And when I found out about the Gullah people and the West Africans that had migrated to the coast of the Carolinas, Georgia, I was thoroughly intrigued. Seeing the amount of linkage with food, with dialect, and they have a completely distinct dialect that they use amongst themselves. But all of that kind of really deeply resonated with me. And for myself, I met a couple of Gullah chefs that were preserving the culture down there on the coast, and that's how I got fully involved. I think somewhere around 2020, I was designated a Gullah culinarian by the U.S. Park Service, and a lot of people don't know that, and that's kind of how it all started.
We are actually on a former rice plantation. The rice was grown directly across the road down here where the river is. And the plantation was initially called Prospect Plantation, but it morphed into what we call Cedar Hill Plantation. And the road that runs out in front of there is now called Cedar Hill Road. This plantation had been in existence for many years, even in colonial times. And we've traced the ownership back then. And my father bought this part of it in 1939. As far as I can tell, my family was not enslaved on this plantation, but we found that my great-great-grandfather was enslaved on a plantation just to the north of here, but not on this particular one.
I think for a lot of folks watching this, we weren't around before refrigeration, BR. And so that was very common at that particular time because of the places that they stayed. They couldn't really cook on the inside, and they didn't have a stove on the inside. And so everything was done on the outside, cast iron, whether you learned how to bake on the fire, learned how to stew on the fire itself. And it was one of those kind of things where we had to do some adaptations when it came to cooking out there. But I think that getting back to that frame of mind from time to time can give you an appreciation for the folks and everything they went through. And it gives you appreciation for the food as well. The rice, the catfish, the oysters, the crabs, all of the different things that comprise really great Gullah cuisine. I think that Gullah Geechee cuisine, the culture, and wanting to know more about it is just an evolution of where we're at as a people right now in the last 10 years, and I'd say from 2010 into what we are right now. We're kind of experiencing a new black renaissance, I would even kind of quote it as. And folks really want to know about the culture that's here in the U.S. We're constantly bombarded with things of the past that are always negative. And so what a great refreshing break with something positive with hearing about the culture that's been here on the coast of the Carolinas and Georgia that a lot of folks just don't know about. And it's really strange because we've been programmed when we thought about black culture early on and migration of slaves into the U.S. that it was just non-exciting. It was something that was completely negative in all aspects. But even in something negative, you can find the positive. And this was definitely a ray of positivity with this culture and what it brought from Africa to the coast. With the West Africans coming, one of their talents was the ability to grow rice. That was one of the big things that ended up coming here. And so rice was used as a culture, just like sugarcane was. It was something that folks used to get rich. And basically right here in the South, there were many rice plantations across the South. And so one of the things that happened along the Carolinas, and mainly right here in North Carolina when it came to rice, and the dominant rice of that time was Carolina gold rice. That's the rice that we like to use with cooking. And just here recently, the rice has been reintroduced back into Oriental North Carolina. So we're getting North Carolina rice where it was always originally associated with South Carolina. The Confederate struggle and all of this kind of thing, you know, you have to think that money was the bottom line to everything. That was the ultimate reason that there were wars and people, you know, all of this, because, you know, letting the slaves go free was a huge economic hit, especially to the South. You know, and this was one of the things that we saw direct impact. Most folks didn't know that's why rice cultivation in North Carolina stopped altogether. The difference between what the slaveholder and the slave ate were drastic. And if we look back in generations, because we can see now in time the manifestation of generations of eating food that was originally not edible worthy. You know, we ate basically the same food that was given to the animals if we had enough to eat. The master had ham, fresh turnips and greens, and corn, you know, grits. They had the rice. We had cornmeal, a jar of molasses, maybe some dry cured pork and things like that. And so anytime that you are starved, especially for nutrition, it affects the mentality.
Gardens have been extremely important in the Gullah community, even during the period of enslavement. Oftentimes, the enslaved would be given time off to grow a garden similar to this. And the reason for that was not something that was altruistic on the part of the enslaver. It was an economic decision.
Sure.
One of the things that we know is rice was a big cash crop. And they spent so much time and energy growing rice for export that they often ran short of food to feed the enslaved population. So if they let the enslaved grow their own garden, that took a financial burden from them. And so, it was important for the enslaved to do that, and they got fresh food, and in some cases they were even given small payments to grow a little garden like this.
So what we got right here is stewed neck bones, and we've got beans in here. Traditionally we use Sea Island peas. I think in here we got a little bit of pintos in here. So when we talk about diets and what the master ate and what the slave ate, this is a huge difference of they would not have eaten this in the house. And again, when we talk about generations and generations of eating food like this, which we normally associate with soul food, we got a lot of other things that come along with soul food: high blood pressure, heart disease, and all of this. But it's ingrained in us. We cling to foods like this because it's a sense of long-term comfort, but it wasn't comfort back then. This is something that we just associated with. So exactly, survival, exactly. And so we're getting ready to taste a little bit of survival right here. I think our country has just directly benefited from the Gullah, the West Africans that came and migrated here under the guise of the Gullah culture. The rice and the richness that it brought to the southern states, that economic growth, it could not even have been marveled at that particular time of how it helped set the pace for the South's kind of rise in early U.S. history. I think that with the evolution of refrigeration when it comes to the evolution of Gullah cuisine as well, it's really afforded us to kind of branch out a little bit and eat some different things a little more regularly than we could eat before. We were just coming out of a situation, we were kind of in a mid-tier where we caught and cooked immediately, and then we were right into a preservation kind of stage. Because again, whatever master gave us to eat that wasn't seafood oriented per se, it had to be smoked or salted or preserved or something like that. And so being able to have refrigeration allowed us to have shrimp, to be able to have food that would be even safer for us to be able to eat compared to when we didn't have any refrigeration before. Also, being a chef and being blessed to grow up here on the coast, it allowed us to be able to feature ingredients and to showcase certain things that we weren't as able to have access to as some of the folks that were plugged right into the native land like they were as well.
My ties to Brunswick County is through my great-grandfathers on my mother's side and my father's side. And we've lived here all our lives. And I love it. It's a blessed area. And I wouldn't live any other place if I had the opportunity to. I love Nebraska. It's the camaraderie of the community. The communities always come together. If there's strife, if there's hardship, if there's anything. And then on Sundays, we commune. We just love each other, show a lot of love in this community. I've always loved to cook. When I was six, my father built the box so I could reach the stove because I wasn't quite tall enough. So I've been cooking a long time. It's just a blessing from the Lord. I have 2 sons and a daughter, and they all can cook. And rice is one of the main things that they do cook. We have a lot of rice. Yeah, we do. On one pot dishes, several things cooked together in one container, one pot. I did it today. The tomato and okra and shrimp together in one pot, served with rice. You have to preserve Gullah cuisine by passing it down through our younger ones. And then they'll pass it to their children. And it'll be like a rolling stone. It will pass right on down forever.
Guys, we appreciate you coming in and just kind of being involved with everything that's going on right now with the Rice Festival and us cooking a little bit of a Gullah-inspired cuisine. So if you were with us yesterday, we were talking about cooking outside in the early, let's say part 1 of cooking outside in that whole Gullah experience, and we talked about different ingredients and why it was used, whether it was preserving fish or preserving meats and salting meats, and why all that came to pass and preparations and all those kind of things. And so we fast forwarded, and right now we decided to show you guys what it would look like when chefs get a hold of those particular ingredients, the way that we look and take those ingredients and show them through a different lens. all of this crab is hand-picked. And so what's happened now is that industry is no longer a native industry. They rely on folks from out of state, out of the country basically, to get here to pick. And just folks here just don't want to do it. We're dealing with Carolina Gold rice. This Carolina Gold rice is not from South Carolina, it is from North Carolina, Oriental North Carolina. And we also know that the Carolina rice was something that was brought from West Africa to the Carolinas. And it was specifically grown throughout the Carolinas for economic reasons. Got about 17, 18 years old, and I got introduced to what they call a rice cooker. Man, it wasn't no looking back. It was like I was driving a Ferrari with the windows down. So I get in there and I press the gas, put everything in there, and it's smooth sailing. We thought it would be worthy to just kind of give you a little bit of taste of what we do here at the restaurant. We pride ourselves in cooking not just local ingredients, but the best ingredients here. And so this restaurant is mainly ingredient driven.
I'm Larry Johnson. I'm the president of Brunswick County Arts Council. I am so excited to be here today to talk about the Rice Festival. I think it's an incredible idea. It has a true basis in the history of Brunswick County.
Yesterday was my birthday, 30th of April, and this was an awesome birthday gift. To be able to go out into the countryside and reminisce about how our people lived and how they grew their food and how they cooked their food and the circumstances under which they had to cook it, the ingredients they used to cook it with. It was an awesome learning experience, and the chef really brought everything almost to life.
Yesterday was just a fabulous experience. It was nice to be back out in the country with some folks and kind of getting the whole outdoor farm experience. I'm from South Carolina, and my grandparents had a place kind of similar to what the Beatties have down there. And it was just really like a homegoing. And the food was like eating home food. It just felt like really what kind of makes me feel whole.
Making sure that people don't ever forget our culture as Africans who came to this country and being able to experience what it was like then and pass that on to a new generation, hopefully.
I was just totally amazed of how little I knew. And now I feel like I'm learning very quickly how important this could be for the state of North Carolina.
I think the rise of the Gullah chef was going to happen regardless. I think when you cook good food and you cook good food from the soul, there's a certain spotlight. I'm obligated to be able to cook Gullah cuisine, and we take it to a higher level. And we educate on that as well. And so in the restaurant, when we're preparing Gullah cuisine, my servers know the origin of the dish, they can speak on that dish, and also go out and enlighten my customers as well. We're living in a time now where we can go and take a test and it can tell you exactly where you come from, what part of where you came from, and how much you are where you thought you came from. And I think that wanting to know and having an association of heritage and culture through food especially is something that made me want to highlight the cuisine. It made others like Chef Sally Ann and Chef BJ Dennis do the same thing.
One time, the lights were out. I have a gas stove, so I cooked breakfast for the elderly in our community because they didn't have electricity. And that's the kind of things we do. All for one and one for all in this community. Say people working for people. Say Mary. Mary didn't have no food. Then somebody's gonna make sure Mary got food, whatever she needs, whatever kind she needs. So we just always been providing for each other.
North Carolina Rice Festival and its board of directors would like to thank all of the sponsors and participants who helped make this video possible. This video was produced in Brunswick County, in northern Brunswick County, and we are really grateful for all the sponsors, especially.